In the worst century in human history, ordinary people risked everything to save strangers. A British spy in Berlin forged 10,000 visas for Jews fleeing Hitler. An Irish priest in the Vatican hid Allied soldiers in his bedroom. The brother of Hermann Göring used his own famous name to free Jews from Dachau. A French pastor and his wife organized a whole village to shelter 5,000 Jewish children. 4 years, not one betrayal. A British stockbroker quietly saved 669 children and never told anyone. The first 4 of them lived long lives. The 5th kept his secret for 50 years, until a BBC studio audience stood up. These are their stories. This is Frank Foley. Officially, he was the British passport control officer at the embassy in Berlin. Unofficially, he was the head of MI6 in Germany. And from 1933 to 1939, he ran the most extraordinary one-man rescue operation of the 20th century. Foley was not a tall man. He was not handsome. He was not Jewish. He wore round glasses and a quiet suit and looked like an accountant. He had no diplomatic immunity. If the Gestapo had caught him, they would have shot him. He did it anyway. Foley issued visas to Jews fleeing Germany, sometimes legally, often not. He forged stamps. He backdated forms. He bent every rule his government had set. He hid Jewish families in his own home in Berlin. He visited concentration camps personally to bargain for the release of inmates, using his own savings to buy them out. He gave Chaim Weizmann, the future first president of Israel, advice on which forms to forge. By the time war broke out in September 1939, historians estimate Frank Foley had saved at least 10,000 Jewish lives. Some estimates put the number higher. He never spoke about it. He never wrote a memoir. He never claimed a medal. He retired quietly to Stourbridge, England, raised vegetables in his garden, and died of a heart attack in 1958. He was 73. When Yad Vashem learned what he had done, they named him righteous among the nations. A statue of him now stands in his hometown. The plaque calls him the spy who saved 10,000 Jews. His own family didn't know until after he was dead. This is Monsignor Hugh O'Flaherty. He was Irish. He was a priest. He worked inside Vatican City, and during the German occupation of Rome, he ran the largest underground rescue network in the city. The Vatican was officially neutral. The Pope had ordered all clergy to stay out of politics. O'Flaherty ignored that order completely. He hid escaped Allied prisoners of war in monasteries, convents, and private apartments across Rome. He hid Jewish families in the same places. He moved people from house to house every few days, ahead of the Gestapo raids. He smuggled them in nuns' habits, in priests' robes, in coal carts. He once disguised himself as a German officer to walk an escaped New Zealander through a checkpoint. The German commander in Rome was a colonel named Herbert Kappler. Kappler hated O'Flaherty. He drew a white line on the pavement around Vatican City and gave orders that if the priest crossed it, he was to be shot on sight. O'Flaherty crossed it anyway, in disguise, dozens of times. By the time Rome was liberated in June 1944, O'Flaherty's network had saved 6,500 people. Allied soldiers, Jews, anti-fascist Italians. After the war, Herbert Kappler was tried for war crimes and sentenced to life in prison. Every single month, for the rest of Kappler's life, the man he had tried to kill came to visit him. Hugh O'Flaherty was Kappler's only visitor. In 1959, Kappler converted to Catholicism. The priest who baptized him in his prison cell was Hugh O'Flaherty. O'Flaherty retired to Ireland and died in 1963, 65 years old. His brother said he never spoke a harsh word about Kappler, not once. This is Albert Göring. Look at the name carefully. He was the younger brother of Hermann Göring, the founder of the Gestapo, the head of the Luftwaffe, the second most powerful man in Nazi Germany. Albert hated everything his brother stood for. When the Nazis came to power, Albert refused to join the party. He helped Jewish friends escape Germany using forged exit papers. When the Gestapo arrested someone he knew, he would walk into the office, use the family name, and demand their release. They almost always let the prisoner go. He kept doing it. For 10 years. He helped the wife of his Jewish boss escape to Switzerland. He sent Jewish refugees money. He sent forged documents to families in occupied Austria. When his name appeared on Nazi warrants 4 separate times, his brother Hermann personally tore the papers up, angry but unwilling to let his brother die. The most famous story: Albert drove a truck into Theresienstadt concentration camp, told the guards he needed prisoners for forced labor, loaded the truck with starving Jews, and then drove them into the forest and let them go. When the war ended, American troops arrested Albert. The name on his passport was Göring. He spent 2 years in jail, accused of war crimes, while interrogators refused to believe his story. What freed him was a list, handwritten in his own pocket, of 34 people he had personally saved. The Americans tracked down the survivors. One by one they testified for him. He was released in 1947. He died penniless in Munich in 1966. He was buried under a name no one recognized. For decades, the Göring name kept his story buried with him. He saved hundreds of lives. His own brother helped him do it. This is André Trocmé and his wife Magda. He was the pastor of a tiny Protestant village in southern France called Le Chambon-sur-Lignon. About 5,000 people lived there. They were poor, they were stubborn. And in 1940, when the Vichy government in Paris started rounding up Jews for deportation, the Trocmés stood up in church and told their congregation, "We will hide them." The entire village said yes. For the next 4 years, Le Chambon hid roughly 5,000 Jewish refugees, mostly children. The villagers hid them in farmhouses, in attics, in barns, in the church itself. They forged ration cards. They smuggled children across the Swiss border at night, on foot, through the snow. They trained children to recite false Catholic identities under interrogation. When the Gestapo arrived in the village, asking where the Jews were, the villagers simply said, "We don't know what you're talking about." Every villager, every time, for 4 years, there was not one betrayal. André Trocmé was arrested in 1943. He spent 5 weeks in a Vichy internment camp before being released. He went straight back to Le Chambon and continued. When the war ended, the village had lost 2 people to Nazi retaliation. They had saved 5,000. After the war, Trocmé refused all honors. He said the village had only done what any Christian village should do. He died in 1971, age 70. Yad Vashem honored the entire village of Le Chambon-sur-Lignon as righteous among the nations. It is the only village in the world to receive that honor as a collective. The villagers, when asked decades later, said the same thing. "We were just doing what was right. There was nothing to talk about." This is Nicholas Winton. In December 1938, he was 29 years old, a London stockbroker, and about to go on a skiing holiday in Switzerland. A friend canceled the trip and asked him to come to Prague instead, to help with refugees. Winton went. He saw the camps full of Jewish families who had fled Hitler's invasion of Sudetenland. He saw children with no future and a war coming. He set up a desk in his hotel room and got to work. For 9 months, Winton organized what became known as the Czech Kindertransport. He raised money in London. He bribed officials in Prague. He forged paperwork the Home Office refused to issue fast enough. He found British foster families for every child personally, by writing thousands of letters, one at a time. Between March and August 1939, 8 trains left Prague carrying Czech Jewish children to safety in Britain. 669 children in total. A 9th train, with 250 more children, was scheduled to leave on September 3, 1939. That was the day Britain declared war on Germany. The borders closed. The train never left. None of those children survived. Winton came home, joined the Royal Air Force, finished the war, married, raised a family, retired, did the gardening. He told no one what he had done, not his wife, not his children, not anyone, for 50 years. In 1988, his wife Greta was clearing out the attic. She found an old scrapbook, full of photographs of children, lists of names, copies of letters. She showed it to a BBC researcher. A few months later, Nicholas Winton sat in the front row of a BBC television show called That's Life. The host, Esther Ranson, held up the scrapbook. She read out the names. Then she asked the studio audience, "Is there anyone in our audience tonight who owes their life to Nicholas Winton? If so, can you stand up, please?" Every person sitting near Nicholas Winton stood up. He was 80 years old. He looked around, blinked behind his glasses, and quietly began to cry. Nicholas Winton lived to be 106. He died in 2015. By then, the number of living descendants of the children he saved had grown past 6,000. None of them looked like heroes. Frank Foley looked like a clerk. Hugh O'Flaherty looked like a country priest. Albert Göring looked like exactly what people thought he was, a wealthy German with the wrong last name. André Trocmé was a small-town minister. Nicholas Winton was a 30-year-old stockbroker on his way to ski. None of them set out to save the world. They started with one Jewish family. One desperate phone call, one forged stamp, one letter to a foster family in Yorkshire. The number kept growing because they couldn't say no to the next person who knocked. None of them spoke about it afterwards. Foley's family didn't know. Winton's family didn't know. Trocmé refused honors. O'Flaherty visited the man who tried to kill him. Albert Göring died forgotten under his own brother's shadow. What they had in common was the smallest possible thing. When the moment came, and they recognized the moment when it came, they looked at the person in front of them and they did not look away. That is what defiance looks like in the dark. It is small, it is quiet, it is often forgotten, but it adds up. Between these 5 people, somewhere north of 22,000 human beings are alive today, who would not have been. Many of them never knew who their rescuer was. If you have someone in your own family who lived through this century, a grandparent who escaped, a grandparent who fought, a grandparent who hid, call them this week. Ask them what they remember. Ask them what the small acts of decency were that they noticed. Most of them have not been asked. Frank Foley, Hugh O'Flaherty, Albert Göring, André Trocmé and the village of Chambon, Nicholas Winton. They all survived. None of them asked to be remembered. They are now. Thank you for watching. I'm Brightside Brief. We will tell another story next week.